Here, I have a TV mount that just came. I ordered this from Amazon, and these are some of the other pieces that are included with it, along with these two bars. And then you can see there's the instruction manual, and they give you this mounting template. So I'm about to mount it on the wall. They did give me a screwdriver with it. So that's that Allen wrench. I guess that's dual purpose. It has an Allen wrench and a screwdriver on it. If I can help it, I'm not going to use a screwdriver part and just use my own. In addition to that, it's helpful if you have a set of sockets, which I'm going to be used for turning the bolts that hold the mount in place. And this is the wall where I'm going to put it. You can see there had been a television there before. There had been a mount there before. So the good thing here is I already know that one of my studs is along this line. And it was easy enough to pull off this thing that has like the wires and the electricity through it, just so that I could reach back here and I can actually feel where the other stud is. So I know where I'm putting things and I don't need the stud finder. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm glad that they gave me this, I'm going to decide how high I want the mount put, and then I can put this card in place, mark where it is, make sure that it intersects with both of the studs. So you'll also want to have a pencil or a pen for doing that. But I'm going to go ahead and do that, drill some guide holes, and then get the mount put up. So despite the mount being on the wall, it hasn't been hung yet. And you might be wondering, why do I have this piece of plywood here? Well, when I check where the studs are, the issue I'm running into is this mount will work if the studs are, I believe this is for 18 inches across. And so where my studs are, it's almost like it's 18 inches and I don't know, an inch or so beyond that. And so that just makes it such that I would not be able to put in the bolts such that they're centered in both of the studs. So I ran down to the local hardware store, I got a piece of plywood, and I've cut it, and you can see from the screws on each side, those are inside the center of the stud. I'm gonna get some more screws put within there so that it's secured in that end. And the way I'm going to install this, the right side of the mount, the bolts for that are going to be in the stud, but on the left side, they're going to be in the plywood, but then the plywood is going to be secured within the stud. And so that's why I had to hang my TV because of the spacing there. So now I'll continue on with getting the bolts put in. And actually, before I do that, I need to make sure that this is level. So I only have it hanging from a single screw here. That's going to be taken out. And this is the level that comes in a box. So while it's hanging from a single screw, I can rock this to the left and right and keep moving it until I get it perfectly level. And then I can start putting the bolts in here. I've got my mount up, and that is really the main part of the installation. So now I'm going to get to preparing the TV to be hung. Now, these are the bars from which the TV is going to be hung. So this is going to go directly on the mount. If you look on the side of the mount, you'll see an oval shaped hole at the bottom and at the top. So these bars are about to go through there. You'll also see that these bars are made so that they can fit together. And so once I get it in place, then the screw on the left and right are going to be secured in with these holes on the left and the right. So I'm going to get these in place and get that tightened. Okay, so now it's in place, and they gave us this other piece that you can put in the center. I don't think this needs to be here. It seems to be more aesthetic than anything else. To put it in place, I get it lined up with the holes. I press on the bottom and I press on the top at the same time, which I have a hard time doing while I'm holding the phone. Okay, there we go. And it clicks in place. For the end of these bars, they also gave us these plastic pieces that we can put on place. And then using, I think it's screw G2, you can just secure these here. And they go on either end. And with those bars in place, this is what everything looks like. Now, before I put the bars on the TV to hang it in place, I'm going to have to remove these screws that are, we're going to set these aside. You can see that there's a bar for securing the TV. And when that bar is closed, it is secured in place with these screws. But before I can attach these bars, I need to be able to get to the bolt holes that are underneath them. So this needs to be open. So let's see, with that said, I'm gonna get these aligned. Now I will just point out to you that when you're choosing the hole on the top, the higher the hole on here, so which way does this go? So if you use a higher hole, then the TV is going to be mounted slightly higher. If you use one of the lower holes, then it will be slightly lower. I don't really care too much about height that much. I do know that I don't want these bars to be visible. But since this TV is going to be higher than my perspective, that's not really that much of a problem. Now, before I put the bolts in place, I need to see whether or not I need spacers. In mounting these, I had to figure out which screw to use because it comes with a number of different screw thicknesses and lengths to use. So for this TV, I have to use the longest screw in order for it to be long enough, but it's too long. So I tried using the longest spacer, but the longest spacer puts too much space on there. The medium spacer doesn't put enough space. So what I actually had to do is I had to use the medium spacer and put two of the shortest spacers on here, and they do give me enough for this. And once I do that, then that's when I can get the screw in far enough to both secure it, and at the same time it's in there far enough to secure it while not being in there too tight. So I'm going to go ahead and get my spacers put on my other screws and get these screwed in. I took the bolts out and I put them in a different hole because I realized something. Where I had them at before, which was in this lower hole, I would only really be able to use that if the screws were flush with the metal, which it is not. Now, in theory, if I still wanted to use those, I could just make sure that the spacers were on the other side of the bar. But the thing you had to make sure of is, remember, when this gets hung, there is that oval-shaped bar that needs to go through here, and if your bolt is protruding from it, then you're not going to be able to do that. If you put the spacers under this bar, then at that point the screw would be flush with it, and you would be able to go ahead and use this. So now the next thing is just to go ahead and hang the TV on the hooks, flip these up, and then put the screws in place. I've hung the TV and I've put these metal bars back in place, so now it's secure on here. So once you get to this point, there's only a few things that might be left to do. In my case, I need to go ahead and get the power connected and any other cables that are connected. If you get it hung at this point and you realize it's not quite level, don't worry, you don't need to take it down and get everything reinstalled. These 4 bolts that are here in the back, if you loosen those, you can actually still rotate it on the mount by a few degrees, and so that'll help you out there. I do want the TV to lean forward because if I have it perfectly flat, somebody that's sitting down lower, as they look at the TV, is going to end up reflecting off to the ceiling light. If I tilt it down a little bit, then that's not going to be an issue. Now, since I have this mounted on plywood, this next thing I'm showing you is not something that I need. But if you have this on drywall, they also give you these other little foam pads with adhesive that could be stuck to the back of these bars so that whenever you push the TV flat against the wall, instead of the bar scratching up the wall, the foam would touch the wall and would not scratch it. But that is not something I need. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take care of figuring out what angles that I want things mounted at, get the TV tilted at just the right amount, and get all of my cables connected and do setup on this. I keep calling this a TV. This is actually a 42-inch computer monitor, but hey, it'll work the same.